Today on Hero Talk.
So funny, I'm not even PMSing. Why am I crying?
I love it. That's funny. Okay, let's get started.
Hey heroes, this is Darrian, your resident string player.
And this is Angela, your certified brass player.
And this is Hero Talk, where we talk about real life
and real women in music.
Well, hey heroes, today with us is one of the world's foremost violin soloists. Chee-Yun Kim has been praised for her flawless technique and compelling artistry. She has performed with many renowned orchestras and conductors and is currently one of the most sought-after violin instructors today.
Thank you.
We're so excited to have you.
Thank you very much.
So to get our audience to know more and more about you, how were you introduced to music?
Wow. Okay, that goes back a long time, but I am one of three girls and one boy family, and I'm the youngest. And my oldest sister played the piano even before I was conceived. Started playing the piano when she was like 3, and we are 5 years apart. And my middle sister played the violin. So when I was born, I was just kind of surrounded by musical instruments and my sisters playing, and how being the youngest and looking at my older sisters, and I just wanted to be like them. And so I asked my mom to give me piano lessons. And I don't even know how old I was. And I think at that time my mom was so tired, taking care of 4 kids, and my brother was just all over the place because he was such an active young boy, and there I was, like the youngest, being so greedy of my mom's attention, wanting to play the instrument. And so, we had one piano in the house, and my oldest sister was quite talented. I mean, she has photographic memory when it comes to music, and amazing. Oh, wow. So she was already like entering competitions, winning competitions. So every time like I try to practice, and my mom would be like, well, your sister needs it more than you. And then I got really jealous of her. And then I was like, no, I need to practice more because I would be better than her. But I was like way worse than her at the time. And so my mom said, you know what? I just, your sister really needs the piano. We only have one piano in the house. So I had to give that up, sadly. And then I looked at my other sister who's playing the violin, and she was practically crying every time she had to practice. Really wanted to be a ballerina. She didn't really want to be a violinist. So I went up to her and I was like, don't worry about it. I'll practice it for you.
That's so funny.
So that was the start of my violin and violin lessons. And then, I don't know, I think it was really mostly my teacher who really believed in me. And he was so much fun. And he was not a big profile teacher per se. He was like sort of neighborhood teacher who was coming by our house to teach my middle sister. And because I had already played the piano a little bit, and I learned how to read music, and I have perfect pitch. So like he will tell me, he's like, oh, which songs did you learn in your kindergarten, and I'll be like, oh, this is the song. And I'll just start playing on it. And then he would just like, whoa, like this is such a lesson.
It sounds like your family is very artistically inclined.
Well, my parents are not, but they really love classical music. And my mom really desperately wanted piano lessons, which she was not given by my grandmother, in the old days, like when my mother was a young woman in Korea or growing up in Korea. And my grandmother was like, well, you just learn to cook well and clean and be a nice wife. And that's the best life for a woman. So my mom was like, well, that sucks.
Yeah.
When she had us girls, especially girls, I think she felt like, you need to be independent, and it's nice to have a skill that you could always have. And maybe being a music teacher will be a wonderful career for women, and that women should should have careers. My mother was a very progressive woman. So thanks to my mom and my dad, just being such a great provider and always agreeing with my mom. So
Mhm.
I got my violin lessons, and I had a wonderful teacher. My first teacher was great, and then my mother thought that I wasn't really putting too much work into it because she didn't see me practice the violin like how I wanted to practice the piano all the time.
Mhm.
So she was worried that my teacher was maybe perhaps wasting his time. So
That's
she
funny.
approached him gently, and apparently, and he said, "Well, I think Chee-Yun should be playing the violin all the time."
Yeah.
And my mother thought, well, she's very competitive with her sisters. Maybe we should have her enter a competition. And then in my mom's head, she was calculating like, okay, let's have Chee-Yun enter like very prestigious, like high level competition. So she will realize that she's not good enough and she's not working enough to enter the
Oh.
Dang.
competition, and then she will give up because if I don't win, because I was so competitive. And then to my mom's surprise and to me as well, and I think maybe my teacher kind of knew I won grand prize.
Yeah.
Go.
That's
Yeah.
one way to show them.
And so from there on, my mother was like, oh, okay. And then I thought, wow, that seemed easy. And I got not only my mom's attention, but I got everybody's attention at the competition. So that was the start of sort of like me thinking, wow, this could be something that I could do for my life and maybe dream of becoming a soloist, one day.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And so that was, and then I started going to one of the foremost violin teachers in the world now, Chee-Yun Kim. Her
Mhm.
students have won Queen Elizabeth in Indianapolis, and she teaches in Korea. And I was one of her first 10 students, I would have to say. Like
Wow.
she had just come from graduating from Juilliard. She had come to Seoul to like sort of start her studio. She
Mhm.
wanted to be a teacher. So I was one of her first 10 students, and I studied with her until I was 13. And then I came to Juilliard pre-college and then studied with Dorothy DeLay, late Dorothy DeLay and Mr. Hyo Kang. So,
Mhm.
and it's been amazing ever since. And
Yeah, it sounds like a violinist's dream to learn from all those people. What was it like making the move from Korea to the state to go to Juilliard pre-college?
well, I mean, coming to America was like something, I was like, well, America's Disneyland, Disney World. That's what I saw on TV. So I was super excited and I really wanted to be in America and to, to study violin. And I was very curious to hear other violinists my age and from all over the world. I had, of course, heard about the reputation of Juilliard and Dorothy DeLay, who had taught Midori and, and Itzhak Perlman, Naja Sonnenberg, and all those people that I was listening to their recordings and so forth. So when I came, I was extremely excited, but then I was extremely disappointed as soon as I landed at JFK Airport in New York City.
Oh yeah,
in
that was it.
in the very start of the summer, and it was so muggy and so hot, and people were not exactly the most friendly people, and I
Yeah.
didn't speak any English. I was so scared, and I was only 13, and then I was with my mom who spoke just as little or if any English at all. And I was like, I can't trust my mom because if we get
Oh.
lost or, we scream, but then people will think that we're New Yorkers, any other New Yorkers, because there were so many crazy people who'll be screaming on the streets anyways.
Mhm.
So,
That's
but
funny.
then, I would like wait till Saturdays so I could go to Juilliard pre-college.
Mhm.
It was pre-college so that I only go on Saturdays to take my lessons, do orchestra, chamber music, and theory class, solfege class, all that. But then during the week, I go to regular school, and which I really didn't fit in. I just come from Korea. I didn't speak English well. I was at that very tender age at 13, like
Wow.
oof, it was
Mhm.
so uncomfortable. But then I just will wait until Saturday so that I could be surrounded by other kids who came from all over the country and all over the world who spoke just as little English as I do, but we'll play instrument. We'll play the violin, cello,
Mhm.
whatever, different instruments. And that's how we communicate with music. And I started
Yeah.
really, I think that was probably the start of like me deeply falling in love with music but just really liking it so much and looking forward to it all the time and realizing that that was the most comfortable place for me, you know?
Yeah, you started your career at such a young age because you had your first performance when you were 8, according to your bio. Um, what was that like starting so young, and how has performing feel different as you've gotten older?
Well, I have to say that first competition was really fun, but then like it started getting harder and harder. And that I started getting nervous. I started like being more worried that I wanted to do better. I started getting really more competitive and
Mhm.
realizing there were so many other kids who had been training before. I mean, I started playing the violin, I think around 6 or 7, but there were kids who had started playing the violin like 3, 4, or 5,
Yeah.
earlier. So I was like, wow, I missed like 2, 3 years. And I like when I had my first teacher, he was so nice, but it was never that serious. I was playing songs, but they were already doing like Kreutzer etudes or, Sevcek
Yeah.
violin studies and shifting exercise. So I felt like I missed out a lot. But, you learn quickly. And especially if you, I don't know, I think for me, music made me extremely focused. I had a hard time reading books, actually, words or letters. It applies to both Korean and English. I'll
Mhm.
fall asleep just starting a book in Korean or starting a book in English. It's the same. But with music, like I could stay up learning a piece of music, and especially added to that pressure,
Mhm.
golden combination. It will make me practice. And so when I told you I won that first competition and I was like, wow, this seems easy. And then I go to the teacher and she already had like, other students who were young and were so talented. And I was like, wow, they are so much better than me. I need to like catch up with them. And I didn't want my teacher to think that I was one of like not very good students, then she won't have as much time, or that's what I thought. So I was like, I gotta get in her line of vision. And that's exactly how I felt when I first came to Juilliard. I think it was even bigger shock because I thought, well, I won competitions. Like after that first competition, I won enter a competition every year. And if you win a competition, that's how you get a performance opportunity to play with the orchestra and play recital or whatever. So for me, that was the way to get on stage. So I would enter competitions and I always had good results. So I thought coming at 13, I was like, I won these competitions, Korea. And I came to Julia, I was like, oh my God, I'm like nobody. They play so much better. They have more repertoire. Like I need to catch up with them. So that competitiveness, like that competition, like being surrounded by that kind of amount of pressure for me actually worked. I know it's not same for everybody,
Mhm.
but it was not overwhelming for me. It was more stimulating. And even though Miss DeLay, Dorothy DeLay, and both Miss DeLay and Mr. Kong were the kindest teachers I've ever had till this day now. My teachers in Korea were a lot more strict and they will like scream at me. And I mean, I knew that it was in good
Yeah.
intention, but like because I would get scared, I'm like, oh, I better prepare because otherwise my teacher will scream at me and like I will be so embarrassed or something.
Yeah.
But Miss DeLay and Mr. Kong would never say anything mean, and they were so nice that it was even more scary. I was like, are they
Yeah.
just like not paying any like they no, oh, you sound great, like means no, not that good. Like the minute Miss DeLay would sit back and she would just have like smile beaming, and then she would just say, I wonder where you could play this piece. I wonder which conductor I'm going to introduce you to. Like that's when you thought, okay, I did well.
Mhm.
So if she just kind of sent me home, or if my lesson was short, she'll mark my page like every single note that I played it out of tune or shifting that I didn't do right, or whatever, or I didn't memorize well. Then I'll be like, oh, that was a horrible lesson. Even though she said, you sound very good. I'll see you next week. You know.
That's so funny.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can't remember what you asked me actually first. I've been talking nonstop.
Oh,
No,
you
you're
answered
good.
it. Yeah.
I honestly, I'm loving this as a violinist. I'm like, oh, this sounds like so cool. And I relate to what you're like saying because I started violin at the age of 11 and piano was actually my first instrument as well. So I remember that switch. Of
Yeah.
course, I wasn't playing competitions at that age because I'm not a soloist, but I know that feeling of like feeling like you had to catch up.
Yes,
Yes.
that was pretty. But you know, I felt like, okay, I gotta be a big girl. Like my mom, of course, my mom and my dad, you know, they sent me away to America. Of course, my oldest sister, I told you that it was playing the piano. She was studying at Juilliard. She came
Oh,
to America when she was 14. She's extremely talented. And so she was studying at Juilliard. She was in college. And so my mom sent me to America. She dropped me off in New York, basically. And my sister was sort of supposed to look after me, which she really had no interest of doing. I mean, she was busy herself and she was only 18, you know, she wanted to enjoy her
hmm.
whatever her friends rather than taking care of like non-English speaking, you know, younger sister who's so annoying and like wanting to like catch up all the time and we didn't like exactly get along when we were young, you know.
Yeah.
So but actually that was also good, you know, like things that made me sort of felt like, oh my God, this is so difficult. I'm not doing well. I'm not like I felt so frustrated. But those were the moments that actually pushed me to grow.
Hmm.
Those were the moments that made me realize that I gotta be independent. And when I do one thing, when I thought like, oh, I could, well, back in the day, you know, we had to do coin laundry in New York apartments.
Hmm.
So I would have to go to the basement with my laundry, and then my sister would be like, "Okay, you figure it out." I had to figure it out on my own. When I was your age, you do it. So I'll go down and I'll just watch other residents do it, and so I just, you know, then imitated what they did and look at them, and
Hmm.
so it was a coin laundry. And like the first time I did it, I was like, "Wow!" I felt so good. Like,
Yeah.
Hmm.
okay, I could do this. Like, what challenge next? And my sister was like, well, she will cook some food, you know. I missed my mom's cooking, my Korean food, and my oldest sister, like, she's just like an incredible cook too. Like, she's just good at everything she does. So she was already an amazing cook, but she would cook her food and she'd be like, no, you can have that. You're gonna have to make your own.
Oh, so she really forced you to grow up really fast.
Yes, she did, and I cried. I like, you know, will tell on my mom on international phone calls. I'm like, mommy, like,
Hmm.
you know, my oldest is like, Ji-Yun is not taking care of me. She's eating her food and not leaving anything for me. And then my mom was like, oh no, let me talk to her. And then of course my sister like would hate me even more because I was telling her. So then I was like, okay, don't do that. Don't tell on her.
Yeah.
Just learn it. And so then
Yeah.
I learned, like I'll watch my sister, you know, over her shoulders and just kind of mimic what she did. And then I was like, oh, okay, well, these different sauces make, okay, these are taste different. I just need more. It's like mathematics in a way. You know, if you need more of this or, and then whatever, you figure taste of food and then you could put them together.
Yeah.
And that's that. That's cooking. So then I was like, oh, now I could do cooking. And I was like, I'm only 14 years old. And then in
Hmm.
the meantime, I'm like learning to speak English as well because I didn't want to be that kid. Oh yeah, she looks different and she sounds really different. And anytime like I will see any 13-year-olds like laughing, you know, amongst themselves, I'm like, oh my God, they're making fun of me. And I felt so
Aw.
embarrassed. So I'll be like, okay, if I'm going to open my mouth to say anything in English, I better sound like them because otherwise they will think that I'm not very intelligent.
Mhm.
So then I watch TV a lot, but that was good excuse at the same time too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
TV. So then like I'll watch like shows and like some of the like at the time it was like Knots Landing was like really popular show on CBS. So I'll watch that and like
Mhm.
mimic their accent. But of course that show was filmed in California.
Oh.
And then I like
Yeah.
Valley Girls
Well,
speak.
I don't hear a Valley Girl accent. So.
I know, like over the years, I kind of learned to, you know, that sounds better to me. I will mimic that. But, you know, like us musicians, I think we have this ability to mimic very well, you know, copy.
Yeah, I've heard that musicians can like learn languages a little
Oh, yeah.
faster because of our I'm sure even with perfect pitch, that goes to a whole other level.
No, but I also find that that was really difficult because sometimes, like one time it was actually at my older sister's wedding. They had at this church, they had an organ, but and then this organist was like, I could play whatever you want. I was like, yeah, okay, I will play Salute d'Amour. And her organ was like, I don't know, it was not A 440 or 439. I will go to A 438. But like when it was like, I was like, no, that's like A flat, maybe
Oh no.
like almost. It was like I can't transpose. And then I would just like try to do it in my head, and it just ended up being like the worst Salute d'Amour that I actually played at my own sister's wedding.
Oh no.
I actually really doubt that it was bad. So
No, but like sometimes I think having relative pitch would be helpful. Like I remember in my solfege class,
Mhm.
I would, like chord progression, like the teacher will be playing chords and then we'll have to say, 1 4 5 1, what those chords were, like immediately.
Mhm.
But then I would try to analyze, but quickly I'm like, oh, I could hear the notes, like which notes he's playing. So then that's how I will be able to tell instead of hearing how the chords progress.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
was actually dictating the notes and like analyzing which notes are in that chord that he was playing, just in a
Yeah.
much faster speed. Yeah, that made me kind of like, oh, chord progression, what is that? Like then it was like in my theory class in my college days, it was difficult to
Yeah.
sit down and analyze quicker,
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
But
yeah,
there's a plus and minus. Makes me feel less bad.
Yeah, same. I did not have her.
there's definitely plus and minus, and I think the balance and realizing that we are all balanced differently.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And there
for
is not
sure.
one is better than the other. If you know yourself, then you need to work on this other that you need more than you just do it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So,
I didn't know we had to add chef to your bio.
Yeah.
oh God, no! I mean, oh my God, my sisters will. Not that maybe I won't give them the link to this
I
podcast.
love it.
I will. But I mean, yeah, they always laugh at me, and I don't dare to cook anything
Oh,
for
okay.
them. Yeah,
Oh
they
goodness.
just laugh. They're like, you don't know anything.
Yeah. Well, today in music, it's very a lot of us find it more regular to talk about music anxiety and such. And you've kind of talked a little bit before about nerves.
Yeah.
How do you combat nerves in a performance? And how is it different from like maybe the start to now?
Gosh, I mean, the thing is about nerves, I feel like it's so unpredictable.
Mhm.
And that's one of the reasons why we get nervous because we don't know what to predict because every concert stage, every incidences are different, like audiences are different. Today I'll be playing, like, let's say I'm playing concerto with an orchestra 3 nights in a row, same concerto. But it's gonna be different audience sitting there, different. Like when I walk on stage, I may be looking like in my preferred vision, I may be seeing other color shoes that might just like break up my concentration at that moment. So there were so many variables, and as you get older, as you get more experience, you realize there are more variables happening around you all the time. So I don't think my nerves will ever go away. And in fact, when it does, I think I'll probably get nervous. I'll be like, wow, wait a minute.
Yeah, why am
Like
I
this
not?
is unusual that I'm not getting nervous.
Mhm.
But I also know, that I could be honest with myself. And deep down, I know when I'm not as prepared. And that's when I get most nervous.
Mhm.
So then, because of that experience, I will say I would never put myself in this uncomfortable situation. At least practice enough, feel comfortable with the piece enough. And then when I did that, I was like, okay, that cuts my nervousness a bit less. Like if I'm gonna be nervous, like 98%, maybe it will be 95%. But
Yeah.
3% gain is a gain. And
Mhm.
recognize that helped. Okay, what else? Okay, and then I would experience, or like when you first go on stage, like before I go on stage, my fingertips are like ice.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I remember very first professional gig being like you're getting paid for it.
Mm-hmm.
So you're like, that puts more pressure because you're like, oh my God, these people actually paid money to come and see me perform. I better do well, otherwise
Yeah.
it's so bad they're wasting their money, or they will say like, oh, that was horrible. I wasted my money and I will never go to classical music concert. So then I'm like that added pressure. And I was like, oh my God, what's going to happen? I go on stage, I start playing. Eventually it gets warmer, and then it's fine. Then I realized, oh, you know what? Maybe I would just like review first couple pages really well, because the minute I start playing, like if the first note sounds as well, or the first passage, whatever, the beginning of the piece goes as well, then my nervousness level, again, from like 90 now, then 95%, maybe it will go down to 92%.
Mm.
I'm getting another 3 point,
Mm.
So it's like baby steps for me. It has been baby steps for me. And then just also giving myself allowance for that. I think that also makes it. And also another reason, like I read this, I think was David Kim, who was a concertmaster of Philadelphia Orchestra. I read it somewhere, like one of his interviews said, it's not like we're brain surgeons. Just because we play a couple wrong notes, we're not going to kill anybody.
I mean, it's true, but it's hard to tell your brain that when you care so much.
I know, but it's like, don't take yourself that seriously,
Mm-hmm.
or don't put that much pressure onto yourself, because once you're on stage, you can't go back. That's also that, like once you go out,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to be able to go back. Might also make the best of it and say, okay, I think I prepare myself enough. I'm just going to trust myself and take a deep breath and smile, because they're really here to encourage you to play well.
Yeah.
You know what? The funny thing is, like when you smile, and I mean, I'm one of those people that I don't mind when I see on audience member, like if, like, I don't know, even the front row, like we make eye contact and I just smile at them. And you know what? When you smile at people, they will always smile back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If
That
they're
person really enjoy that too. They're like, oh, she's looking at me.
Yeah, exactly. So, and they're just like, oh my God, can she see me? Can she see me? And like, unless they look away, they're going to smile back. And the feeling I get when I see somebody smiling back at me, that's always warm to me.
Yeah.
That's why I would always try to smile when I see people too, because I know how it feels.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when you're on stage, it's like, oh, thank you. Like that 1% matters. So yeah, I mean, I put all those things in my head and constantly, but also like when I go on stage, I start to play music in my head. I think of my music as like a cassette, or like a cassette tape player.
That works.
Such an oldie. Like CD player or whatever, computer on your iPad, or the minute I start playing, I only sing music in my head.
Oh. Yeah.
I know what to expect, when you know the score really well, like you start to anticipate.
Mm-hmm.
I sing it inside my head so loudly, not voice, but I am singing as I'm playing.
Yeah. Do you think that comes with, because I'm sure you've played a lot of the same major repertoire many times, does that come with playing all those concertos regularly?
Regularly, of course that helps. I mean, I am not gonna lie, when somebody asks me to play concerto that I've just done, or that I'm doing a lot in this season, or that I've played many times, I love it. But even if it's a new piece, and that that's why with a new piece, of course, if you play new concerto, you memorize it, you practice a lot more. I mean, there is a reason to it. And when you are that much prepared, like you go through it with a pianist, and and then sometimes I play with a recording, somebody else's recording, or and then, or like with a metronome, because a lot of times that practicing with a metronome, I know I used to hate doing it, because then it made me feel so bad, because it basically teaches you like, you think you're ready, not you're ready.
Yeah.
It's a really strict teacher, but they don't speak to you. Like, it's so cold, and that's why we don't like it, because it's a machine.
Yeah.
But I have to say, like, there was a reason why my teachers were always telling me I should practice with a metronome.
Yeah. How do
And
you
he,
keep
yeah,
your, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt
no,
you.
no, no.
But I was thinking, because you were talking about practicing your pieces, how do you keep like the concertos fresh? Because I know if I've played like a piece many times, then that I start feeling like I need a break from it. But if like I know you're playing the Tchaikovsky concerto soon and you're doing it for multiple concerts, like how do you keep that fresh? How do you keep it exciting for each performance?
Well, that's a very good question because one time I was touring with San Francisco Symphony and Michael Tilson Thomas playing the Mendelssohn Concerto.
Oh,
Mhm.
nice.
And each night, it was like we had to do 6 performances in like 10 days. So that was a lot.
Yeah.
And I had played Mendelssohn Concerto probably most than any other concertos too. So I was, like, wow, I hope that it doesn't get monotonous, it doesn't get
Mhm.
like uninteresting for me because that would be just a death basically. It helped me for MTT, I call it MTT, to come into my room before we go on stage. And he was such a great mentor to me as well. Like he said, how about, this phrase, I love what you did yesterday. And here I was feeling like we could try this one. And then like another night he would come into my room and he goes, can you just play, the second theme once more for me? Just want to hear it. Like, let me see what you're doing. And then he would just leave. And I'll be like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Almost kind of kept me on toes thinking, wow, like I don't have to play the same all the time. And if I go with it, and he's such an amazing musician that he will trust you enough. And that's the trust that he wanted you to have for him as well. That
Mhm.
I got you back. And when you do that, and I'm sure you guys realize when you play with your colleagues, your peers as well, it's like if you trust that person when you're playing on concert, on stage, things could happen spontaneously, musical language.
Mhm.
And yet, because you trust one another, you listen well and you know what to listen for. Even if that your friend doesn't do exactly what she did or he did at the rehearsal, you catch it. And that is such an incredibly spontaneous, fun
Mhm.
moment. And that puts like smile on your face. And then like MTT will be like winking at me, like he's like, gotcha. I got you. And
Yeah.
almost like he kind of challenged me to do that. So
Mhm.
I was like, you know what? That gives even more room to explore.
Yeah.
So,
Like you really trust yourself. I'd be terrified.
but it's like practice.
Yeah.
Again, once you practice that thought, practice that attitude, practice that passage enough
Mhm.
times, it will become your second nature, I believe.
Oh, well,
And you
that's
start to believe in that thinking time. And I think that's what my teacher, Dorothy DeLay and Mr. Kong, I think they were teaching that without telling me exactly that. That
Mhm.
kind of that positive teaching, the effect of wonderful, positive, but constructive teaching. I think that's what they were teaching me.
Yeah.
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 I really like the fluidity of that, of like you are able to like maybe change a style or a phrase or an emphasis on something in each performance. It reminds me of a lot of like of jazz in a way, especially
Yeah.
free jazz, and you can just do whatever. That's awesome that you can
The
like,
brass player.
yeah, I know, you can
You
incorporate that
know,
into a violin concerto, whatever it may be.
yes, like color of a note
Mhm.
could be changed instantaneously, and it could be,
Yeah.
I also like I don't know, I don't see colors, or if I really close my eyes, I try like when I listen to some Debussy or Ravel, or when I play Ravel like trio. Sometimes I feel like I can see colors, different color palettes,
Mhm.
or like splash of color coming, you know more, not just because it's impressionistic. I'm not saying I'm muted
Mhm.
little dots or Monet painting, but you actually see splash, like especially with Ravel music. It's so passionate
Yeah.
and it has such spice to it. And I feel like, yes, we're not jazz music, we don't improvise, we're not going to go to other scale, other lean on other notes or anything like that, but we could change color by like
Mhm.
different
Yeah.
speed of vibrato with a right hand, with a position of the left more flat as opposed to pointy, or
Mhm.
different things like that.
Yeah, I've had people ask me like, how do you listen to like the same concerto? I'm like, well, it's all in the nuance. It's really that's where the like true masters can you can tell through how they change the nuances. So
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. The minute I learned about color and music when I was very young, I was like, this is a game changer.
Yeah.
It
Yes.
everything for me.
Yes, and then when you start to listen for that, you really truly like that. I'm just actually getting goosebumps talking about it because I get goosebumps. And I remember when I first listened to Foray Violin Sonata, A major.
Mm.
When I was 17, my dad sat me down and because my family moved to America when I was 15.
Mhm.
My dad was like, "Oh, it's hard to sustain two different households when my two daughters they were still young in America. My mother was so worried that she would want to come and visit us up often, and my other sister and my brother and my dad were in Korea. My dad was like, "No, we need to be united. We need to be together as a family unit." So my dad came to America when I was 15, moved the whole family, and it was very difficult
Yeah.
for them. And so when I was 17, my dad sat me down for the first time and he said, "I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to send you to college because I don't have my." He had a liquor store and it was just in the red every month. And like my dad never really shared that when we were growing up, but he sat me down and he said, "Is there maybe competitions you could enter, win scholarship and maybe get a manager, so you could play concerts?" And so I was really shocked, but then I was like, "Oh my God, I want to be able to go to college. I want to go
Yeah.
to Juilliard." And so then I sat down with Miss DeLay, and then she said, "Well, these are the competitions coming up." And so the first competition that was in the nearest future that I mean, I had to give myself at least 1 year to prepare all those repertoire that requires for the international competition, though I had a lot of concerto that I could use. So the first competition that was on the list that was earliest that was coming up was 1989 Young Concert Artist International Auditions. So I was like, okay. And then after that, I can't remember, like either Naumburg, Tchaikovsky, Queen Elizabeth, Hanover, all that came
Yeah.
after that, Indianapolis. So for YCA. And then YCA, Ms. DeLay said, "Listen, this is a competition. If you win it, you get a management. You actually get a 3-year management contract. You could start making money.
Mhm.
And this is but don't sweat it. It could be a really great experience, but you have multiple other competitions coming up." So basically, she was telling me, like, don't have expectations to get that because many students enter it. And also, YCA attracted. Well, the year I won, there were like 6 violinists. So you see, like, there were like Paganini competition winner, like, somebody like some other international Shaktivo competition winner like came from other countries, and then we became all winners. They chose all of us to be represented by YCA. But so for that competition, I had to come up with a recital program, and my teacher, Mr. Lei and Mr. Kong recommended. Mr. Kong actually more. He recommended, you want to listen to Foray Violin Sonata A major? And I didn't know the piece, and I said, yes, of course. So, back in the day, we had to go to the library and find the LP recording to listen to it. And I literally started crying. And it was Yasha Heifetz's recording.
Yeah.
And there was so much feeling and so much emotion in the first movement already, even from the first introduction of the piano introduction of it. I was like so being overwhelmed, and because of that age and the talk I had with my dad. So then I was like crying listening to it, and I was like, oh my God, I love this piece so much. And then I learned it, and I loved that. I mean, till this day, like I love playing that piece, and I love that sonata. I love listening to it when somebody else plays it, because that sonata taught me to listen for colors. Like I heard so many different colors and different emotions. And I was like, wow, this is why I love music.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm just like.
No, it's really awesome, like hearing like someone's journey to like how that this is what you're doing and you're doing like you're where you're supposed to be.
Yeah. So it was like, wow, and then, even though my teacher said, she was, oh, don't worry, this is just the first competition on the list. And there were many others after that. I was just like, oh my God, if I don't get this, I'm dead.
No, no pressure.
So much pressure, and I probably worked my butt off that year more than any other year. So yeah, I mean, I always say, you gotta be extremely hungry, and I actually think, in a way, like I thank my dad for sitting me down and actually telling me the financial situation. I think he felt really bad doing it because I'm the baby
Yeah.
in the family, but I think that was like, if he hadn't done that, I don't know if I would have been as hungry in a way.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Would
Yeah.
you say that experience is probably like one of your favorite memories of being a musician, a soloist, just the competition and like hearing that for the first time, the sonata?
Yeah. So funny. I'm not even PMSing. Why am I crying?
I love it. That's funny.
Well, I guess I can tie us into talking about what it's like being a woman in music, with
Yeah.
all
Well, I tell you, when I was, reading I went on your website and reading about your statement, and I just like, that really touched me. And
oh,
you guys that is so cool that like, I'm just so impressed that you have the ability to even think about that and come up with this podcast and this giving the women artists and musicians this platform to talk about that. Because when I actually, I came to America in 1983, and I was like, wow, there was still a lot more, maybe, there were like many more concert masters in men, like
yeah.
men leading the orchestra, and then like Vienna Philharmonic. I mean, how many years like have
Yeah,
they
Vienna Philharmonic
actually?
didn't let women in to the orchestra until 1997.
Exactly. So, I mean, it was very different time then. But then I also thanked my predecessors. Like, even looking at Miss DeLay, I was like, "Wow, you're world's
Yeah.
greatest teacher, and you're a female! Yay!"
Uh-huh.
And also my teacher in Korea, Nam-Yun Kim. She was
That's
like,
true.
yeah. So I had like incredible role models, and I would thank them for
Yeah.
paving the way for us. And Kyung-Hwa Chung, as a Korean female artist, I mean, she really paved the way. I mean, when she had to be in the scene, in the concert scene, it was like 20 years before that. I mean, I can't even imagine being an Asian woman and, in the music field, and being a soloist at that. So I felt like, well, they made it easy for me. And then like seeing you all making this platform. Did I just say y'all?
Don't worry, I say y'all all the time.
You know what? I actually like it because I think it's kind of really charming. I love like different accents. I wish I had kept my Korean accent now that I think it does come out sometimes. Anyways, yeah, I mean, I think we're having incredible moment. I love this momentum, and this is giving like wonderful opportunity, and I'm just loving seeing you ladies, coming up with this platform and
Thank you.
thinking of it, even like that is so innovative. And the fact that you're musicians and yet you think outside of the box. I mean, I just thought, just learn music and play with it. But you guys are like, what else can we do to like
Well, I
make
know I definitely am not a soloist. I've soloed with an orchestra once and I was like, not for me. I was so nervous. I did it and I was like, you know what? I'm good.
Oh, well, I mean, it's just, I think different, like I had a different like sort of training where I just didn't think that there was anything much more than that. And in fact, I fell in love with chamber music
Oh,
when
I
I
love
came
chamber
to
music too.
college. And I was like, now I regret that I would have spent more time doing it. Now I never turn down a chamber music festival invitation. And so
Aw.
I go to many, many chamber music festivals, and almost like, my manager like tells me, you're like, she calls me, yes, no problem. Yes. Like I'm the yes artist, But
That's
of
great.
course, learning to like, knowing yourself, knowing how much you could do, how much
Yeah.
workload you could do. Of course, that is
Mhm.
also a process, and I've been getting better at it. But I love chamber music because I was like, oh, it's so much better to practice with my friends. You know,
Oh,
you
yeah.
practice your
Yeah.
part, but you're
You're
only
all in
one
it together.
part of it. Yeah, you're doing it together. You're going on stage together. You're getting nervous together. And I love playing in the orchestra too when I was in pre-college and college. And
Mhm.
just I felt so overwhelmed by the sound that I was hearing, you know, surrounded by all these different brass instruments. You know, and
Don't
then,
forget the trumpet player.
oh, you could never forget the trumpets and brass section. They're huge sound, you know, and women like brass. You know what? In brass section, there were not too many women playing
Still
instruments,
isn't.
especially trumpeters. No,
I
not too
know.
many.
Yeah. So
Bravo,
I
bravo.
would like to. I would also like to ask, like, has there ever been a moment in your career where you felt like it was affected because you're a woman?
Um, I mean, only when I had like uncomfortable situations with
Yeah.
some of the conductors, who were like, "Oh no, you know, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm okay to just go to my hotel room by myself."
Oh, yeah. Hmm.
And we could talk about music, you know, in your studio at the hall with the door open, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the only moments. But even that, like I talked to my man, like when I first won YCA, I had an incident when I was sent to perform with an orchestra, and the conductor made me feel really uncomfortable. I ended up playing very badly, and like you know, like there was no Me Too movement then.
Yeah.
In fact, you better not say anything to the conductor. Pretend that you're all okay because you know you don't want to offend him, you don't want to make him whatever, so that he will invite you back and play with the orchestra again. And my manager sat me down and she was just like, you better toughen up, you know,
Oh, wow.
don't make smart decisions, don't put yourself in vulnerable situations. And I said I didn't, but I felt bad. She goes, well, grow a thicker skin.
Wow.
And she was like, you know, I'm sure like men do this in the business world. Just because we're musicians, we're sensitive, that doesn't mean that we need to be fragile.
Mm-mm.
That sensitivity does not have to be in the, you know, dealing with people business.
Do you think that would be different now? Like if you were like, if that happened to you at that age now, do you think the response would have been different?
Yes,
Mhm.
I think so. And for that, I think it's wonderful. It's great that I kind of wish that I had more of like pampering or more of a protection from,
Mhm.
but because I didn't have that, but you know what? Other like Kyungwa Chung, like, or even my teacher, can you imagine like what they had no protection
Oh,
whatsoever.
yeah.
So I think that's why my manager, who was considerably older than me, was telling me to toughen up because she sort of like, she was like, oh, compared to my time,
Oh,
this
yeah.
is easy for you, you know?
It still shouldn't happen, and
Still
it's
shouldn't
unfortunate.
happen. Still,
Yeah.
absolutely not. And, you know, when I have my friends, I'll have friends in other fields of profession and what they dealt with. Like I have a lawyer friend and she was like, oh, well,
Oh no, yeah.
Mhm.
it's incredible.
So, do you have advice for young female musicians or violinists from some of the experiences and things that you've learned?
Well, you could also say no with a smile.
That's good.
Yeah. That for me, that was when my manager had told me, you could toughen up. You don't have to go to certain, you know, it's like you're saying no, you're drawing, you know, what do you call it? You're setting the boundaries,
Yeah.
but you do it nicely. It's
Yeah.
like, you know, that's really, you know, I'm really tired. Or like, that's very nice invitation, but you know, I don't feel comfortable. Or we could talk about that tomorrow. You know,
Mhm.
my head is not very clear right now. Or you could come up, but thanks for asking though. That would have been a good idea if it was a daytime. You know,
Mhm.
things like that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And they usually get it, and if they don't, then maybe like second time, then I'll be like, do you look at yourself? Do you think that I'll be attracted to that? No, I'm kidding.
Oh, burn. So,
No,
would you
I could never do that. I wish
Same.
You're
I couldn't
thinking it.
either.
You're
Seriously?
thinking it.
Darrian and Angela, I was always thinking it. It just like could not come
yeah.
out of my mouth.
Yeah.
But I feel like nowadays you guys could say it and you guys get away with it.
I don't know. I still don't say anything. I'm probably in the same boat where I'm like, no, but I'm saying it with a smile.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of, rejections. I mean, we've all dealt with rejections too. It's like setting boundaries, tell them what you can, what your no's are and yeses are, make it clear, but do it with smile, both of them. Say yes with a smile, say no with a smile.
Oh, I have one more question. I want to ask about your violin.
Oh, that's
because
Yes.
yes, it is first off so cool that you're playing on a violin that is so old and from
So
the
old.
1600s. What is it like playing on literally a piece of history? Like, did you like feel it before, like when you first picked it up and played it? Like, did you just know? Because I've never played on an instrument that old or probably that expensive either. I've always wondered, can you just tell?
Yes. And I could say to you, it was not the most expensive instrument that I tried,
Oh.
but when you know, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I don't know, maybe it was just no, it was a violin for sure. I mean, everything about that violin was so what I wanted. It immediately felt like inviting. It was like violin was saying, like when you look at a pet, like when you look at like such, even like over the screen, sometimes I would look at, TikTok videos of like these, I love these animal ones.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
They're so inviting. Like,
Mhm.
but it's mine. Like I actually got to hold it in my hands and then play it, and then it just response was
Mhm.
overwhelmingly inviting and cozy and tender and warm. Um, for me, like hands down, it was no competition. Any
Yeah.
other violin I tried, yeah, there were some other strats, and not that I could afford it, not that I could afford even this one. And I thought, wow, I mean, this is incredible. So I was very, very fortunate. I had a wonderful, wonderful lady who was super generous, and actually met her when I was doing Young Concert Artist audition. She was volunteering because she was a board member of
Mhm.
that organization, and she was volunteering. Like, we had to draw a raffle at the finals, to pick
Mhm.
number to go, which number you go,
Mhm.
and she was just there, like giving us a basket, and like we're like, oh yeah, pick the number. She was just standing there, and but there was a look about her. She was very tall, and she beautifully dressed, but very elegant, and she had a haircut like center part, and mostly kind of black hair, like really, like they were like curled up like this,
Uh-huh.
blood cut. But then she had a streak of gray hair, like in the front,
Ooh.
Ooh.
and she was wearing these very like red frame glasses, and she had such air about her,
Cool.
but
Mhm.
like kind of cold,
Yeah.
kind of mysterious. But then I was just like, wow, like she left me a like impression. And then after I won the competition, I didn't see her again for months. And then I'm at Juilliard, and I'm waiting for my lesson outside Miss DeLay's studio. And there's a like sort of sitting area, couch area, and then there's another classroom, the hallway of classrooms. And there was a lady like in the couch area, mostly us violinists or the studio mates, right? My
Mhm.
other students of Miss DeLay. And then I see this lady. I'm like, oh my God, that's that lady from that competition. So I went up to her. I was like, I think I've seen you. And she goes, yes, we met. I know who you are, and congratulations.
Oh.
And she said to me, I've always only liked piano, and that's why I came to listen to pianists. But unfortunately, your year, there was no pianist that who won YCA. It was six
Yeah.
violinists, 1989. But she goes, but you changed my mind. She goes, I don't
Aw.
like all violin sounds, but I like your sound.
That's quite a
And I was like,
compliment.
oh my God, that's the nicest thing to say. And so I was talking to her, and then she was like, asking me where I live. I said, I live in New Jersey, and my father drives me in for my classes, and he picks me up on his way home. When he closes the store downtown, and then we go home. And she's like, then when do you go to concerts? I said, well, I go to concerts, but like I have to leave like as soon as they finish. My dad comes to pick me up at 10:45 p.m. in front of Juilliard. And she was like, oh, I live like walking distance from Juilliard. If there are concerts that you want to go to, and I'm sure you want to see your friends afterwards, you're welcome to stay over at my place. And she
Oh.
goes, why don't you come over to my place and have dinner one night? So I was like, yeah, that sounds great. I
Mhm.
gotta go to her place, and I'm like, this is the biggest apartment. This is like, whoa, like 5 room apartment with a library, with like dining room, with like a
Wow.
living room, and big kitchen. It was like palace, and I was like, wow. And it was only 6 blocks from
Mhm.
Juilliard. So I was like sitting at a very long table, and she had somebody like bring the food for her and stuff. She said, well, all my 3 children have moved out, and I'll show you where you could stay. And it was her daughter's room, and basically it was like a studio apartment. Like I did have to go through the front entrance, but like you would have to walk towards like different corridor to get to her daughter's room, as opposed to her library and her bedroom over there. And then
Mhm.
there was another kitchen, like other areas. So I was like,
Yeah.
oh my God. And so then I started staying over more and more. And so she became like, I don't know, she was kind of too young to be my grandmother. She was older than my parents, but she's so
Mhm.
kind, like 10 years older than my parents. And she was so kind. And my parents got to know her. And like she gave me reception at her apartment after my New York debut recital and all that. And when I came, like when I was looking at this violin, because I got a recording contract with Denon Records, and it was one CD deal. And if I do that CD well, then I will get like 4 more,
Mhm.
right? So I was like, I need to do this very well. And my teacher, Dorothy Lay, was like, well, you're playing on the violin. You've done well with that violin since you were 10, 11 years old. But this violin is not sophisticated enough and for recording. You need to have a better violin. Maybe you could borrow a violin. So I will go to Jacques Francais, or back in the day, Jacques
Mhm.
Francais was alive, and that was a violin shop in New York. And I would try Guarnero, Stella Jesus, Strats, and I just couldn't. I didn't find anything that I liked, even wanting to borrow.
Mhm.
And Bayan Fushi brought some instruments to Juilliard and was showing some of them. And then there was Ruggieri. I never heard of Francesco Ruggieri, and I was like, wow, it's very pretty to look at. And I tried it, and I was like, oh, like immediately, I was in love with it.
Mhm.
And I told the patron lady, Bobby Katzender, about it, and she was like, okay, well, let's see, maybe I could talk to some of my friends. We could raise money to help you out, with, because I had to come up with enormous amount of money
Yeah.
in 3 months. And as I told you, like my father's business was not doing well. I was basically, you know, playing those YCA concerts and just giving the checks to my dad so we could like,
Mhm.
have a
Yeah.
house and stuff,
Of course.
I could go to school and stuff. So she was like, and we couldn't really raise money. And I said, I need to come up with this money like in 3 months, this amount. So she was like, okay, I will give you interest free loan. You could pay me back whenever.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
That
I
was
mean,
really generous.
insane, insane. So she gave, and then her very, another very nice patron who was also a board member of Young Concert Artist. I don't know if I feel comfortable enough to mention her name. She's still alive, but she's still a very big patron of the arts. She actually gave me like $10,000 just gift as a gift.
Wow.
And I mean, I had incredible help. And then I paid my patron late. I mean, but you know what? The money, yeah, that was interest-free loan, but I lived at her place for like,
Mhm.
most of my college years, like free room and board basically. And I had
Wow.
the best, like she would bring me to Carnegie Hall, to Vienna Philharmonic concerts. We had like, she would have orchestra seats, and I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe
I
I'm
would be
going to visit this.
so excited. That sounds
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. And so I had amazing, like, she was amazing. She passed away a few years ago, but yeah,
Yeah.
so
That's
I
really
like
cool.
took me about 12 years to pay her back.
Mhm.
I did it like slowly. Um, yeah, but now I own it, and
Mhm.
it's beautiful. It's sounding even better. Like when
Oh.
I first got it, I got it appraised by Mr. Detilly. At the time, he was world renowned appraiser of all these great violinists. He lived
Mhm.
upstate New York, and he was looking at my violin just like, shaking his head. He's just like, he's in disbelief. I'm like, oh my God, please tell me that everything you find, the paper says it is worth that much money.
Yeah.
And tell me that because I love this instrument so much. And then he says to me with his French accent, which I cannot imitate, he said, in my 30 years of or 40 years of career, I have looked at hundreds of old instrument, old Italian, famous, over 300-year instruments,
Mm-hmm.
but never came across an instrument like yours. Looking this brand new.
Wow.
There's no wear and tear. Who
That's
had
crazy.
this violin?
Yeah.
Who played on it? Because usually, instruments like that are old and famous have a history of different players. And I said, I don't know. I asked Bainafushi, they just said it belonged to a family in like Scandinavian country somewhere. Like, and that's it. No actual players. And then I come to like find out, like many years after that, it was like 2013 in Eilat, Israel, January. I was playing a Tchaikovsky concerto.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next day in the morning, we had a Q&A session, and they asked me to come and play Bach Chaconne and do Q&A with the audience members. And it was like concert hall that was full of people. It was full of people the next like morning.
Yeah.
And then we were like, there were some concertmaster with the orchestra, conductor, and some other people like doing discussions, Q&A with the audience members. And one tall gentleman stands up and he says, tell me about your violin. So I kind of give you like what I just told you, but much shorter, sort of like, oh, I met this violin when I got the recording contract. I was 21 years old and like I fell in love with the instrument immediately and da 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 da. And it's Francesco Ruggeri, 1669. And then he came to me after all that was over, and he said, like, there was a couple people wanted to congratulate me and so forth. So he was in line to talk to me, and then he says to me, he spoke perfect English. So there were a lot of American Israelis, American Jewish people who had properties in it. Eilat, Israel is considered like the Palm Beach of Israel. So that's why the Israel Chamber Orchestra will have like a festival during winter time. And then audience members will be those patrons. So he was like, my father was an avid collector and an amateur violinist, and he had one of Francesco Ruggeri's violins, but he often wondered about yours. I said, how do you know that he wondered about mine? Well, Ruggeri did not make too many instruments during his lifetime. Fewer survived. But the one he made in 1669, that was considered to be his best. Not only that, it was rumored to be buried with one of its owners.
Oh, wow.
And he said, but I'm glad that it's in good hands now.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, what?
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God. If I wish that I would have had like iPhone then, record what he just said, get his number or something. But I didn't have I didn't even have I was in Israel. Like there was no cell service. You know what I mean? But I had my bestie with me. She could confirm that story. Wow. She's like, I remember that.
That is so unique.
Yeah. Anyway, so it was rumored to be buried, and that's why there was no wear and tear. I still have my varnish on that instrument is still from 1669.
That is so cool.
Yeah, I wonder if they like wrap the violin separately from their owner or something like that.
I'm pretty sure. And then I met somebody who said, if like in Norway, the Viking ships that have survived thousands of years, all those leather goods and then all those wood things, it's like intact. They have a different barrier system, apparently. So maybe it was there. It was buried somehow so that it will survive. I'm sure it was not with a dead body.
All I know is that would have been a waste for it to stay under the ground forever.
Absolutely. And it's been risen above ground.
Yes. All right. So before we finish out, we like to end on a little bit of trivia.
Yeah.
Yes. So I'll ask you 3 questions, and then I'll ask Angela 3 questions. And whoever wins, and that's just how we end on a fun note. So here we go. We have our hero.
So bad with this game.
Oh, same.
Just warning you. Okay.
I'll also be bad. We'll be bad.
All right. So do you want to go first, or do you want Chee-Yun? Do you want to go first? Or...
I don't know. Yeah, sure.
Okay. All right. So I like to dig into our interviewees' bios for questions to see how well you know your own history. So, according to your discography, how many solo albums have you put out?
Oh my God, hold on.
Yeah, I counted all the pictures, so I know.
Okay, solo albums, but this is not the compilation of some of the albums, right?
Oh.
Because I have some compilation. They like put like from
Based
my
on your
debut
website,
album.
based on your website, the albums that you have on your website.
Of course, I did not design my website either. Oh, I had somebody else do it. Oh, yeah.
That's smart.
10?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, did you say 10?
10, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Congrats.
And yeah, I apologize for not being more specific, but I was just counting the pictures of your albums. I was like, oh, wow, you have 10 of them. That's okay. So in 2000, I don't want to give away the date because that's the question. Okay. So what year did you appear in the HBO series Curb Your Enthusiasm? You had a cameo.
Okay, so really cool. Are you talking about the air date or the actual film date? The year? Probably air date, right?
Yeah, probably air date because that's
2008.
No, it's 2009.
9! Oh!
So close. What was that like being on an HBO show?
Oh my God.
Cool?
That was so cool. And Larry David was so nice. And he loves classical music. Do you know his favorite? Oh, this could be a trivia question. Like, actually, it should go on the game. His favorite classical music ever is Schubert B-flat Trio, second movement.
Wow.
Wow.
In fact, if you watch the episode again, in the very beginning, he's at a cafe and he's got the headphones on and he's like whistling. The tune he's whistling is the theme from second movement of Schubert B-flat. Because I had asked him that while we were like on a break, while we were filming, because I spent like 12 hours with the guy.
That's so cool.
The whole cast was so cool. I mean, for me to be in that 5 minutes of the 25-minute show, they actually, including like, getting made up, makeup, trip time, and then so actual film timing was like 8 hours. It was a lot to make that scene. And then the thing is, because that show is they edit it. They have the stars, they edit. Producers. There's several producers, but there's just outline. So there's no script. Yeah. So every scene, what they choose is like 1 out of 5 at least. So there will be just scenarios they will choose.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah. So
how'd you not laugh?
Larry David is like being chased by Rosie O'Donnell up the stairs, at the end. He shot that at least 5 times, if not more. And then when he came back from that shoot, I was like, no wonder you're so skinny. And he goes, you have no idea how much calorie I use.
That's so funny.
That's such a cool story. All right, and last question.
Yeah.
What game did Mozart like to play while he composed? I'll give you multiple choice. Chess?
Oh.
What?
Wait, go ahead.
What game did he like to play while he composed? And your multiple choice is chess, billiards, or solitaire.
What is solitaire?
It's a card game.
Oh, okay. Billiards?
Yeah.
Nice. Wow.
I didn't know that. I learned that while coming up with the questions. All right. So you got 2 out of 3. Angela, you ready?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So since I'm the violinist, I have to ask her violin questions. All right. How many pieces of wood are there in the modern violin? So your multiple choice is 50, 10, or 70.
It's a big range. On the modern violin, pieces of wood to make the violin. I knew I should have watched a violin video.
I actually didn't know this.
I don't know it either. Whoa.
I feel like 10 is too small because they're probably little small parts. So I'm going to go with 50. No. Oh.
It's 70, actually.
70. Interesting.
Really?
Yeah. There's at least 70 wood parts to a modern violin.
Wow. I never knew that. Wow.
Well, look,
that was a hard question, though.
Yeah, it was.
This is what Hero Talk is for, learning.
The violinist didn't even know.
All right. So, Which of these symphony pieces is not considered standard audition repertoire for violinists auditioning for professional orchestras?
Okay.
You have Don Juan by Strauss, Mendelssohn's Scherzo from Midsummer Night's Dream, or Prokofiev's Symphony No. 3, which is not considered standard.
Not considered standard. Okay. I've heard violinists talk about all of them, I think. I'm questioning one, so maybe it's that one.
I'm sure you know.
I knew it was that one. I was going to say Prokofiev.
Is that?
Yeah, that's my final answer, yeah. I was like, I don't think I've ever heard you talk about that or anyone.
Prokofiev 1 is the most asked, the classical symphony, but she gave it to you.
I was thinking it.
Yes.
Which famous female composer created the American Composers Forum?
Oh, I know this, but
yeah, you do. We've talked about it.
There's a co-founder as well.
Well, we're talking about the female.
Okay, well, it's Libby Larson.
Yeah.
And it's also Stephen something. I don't know his last name. It's something Douglas or something.
Well, Libby Larson's the only one that I'm asking about.
Well, there's two founders. I don't know.
Nobody else matters.
I guess
we're talking about women here.
Sorry.
She was
make us equal.
I think she was like the main starter. But we have a tie.
Okay.
I did prepare for a tiebreaker this time.
No!
All right. So whoever answers first wins. Okay. What is the title of Beethoven's only opera?
Oh, I know this. It's can I answer?
Yes.
Fidelio.
Good job.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I love it. You guys are so good. So fun. This went by so fast.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, I know. Well, thank you so much for your time. We don't want to keep you. We're sure you're incredibly busy.
Yeah.
I could talk to you for hours.
I know, you guys are, this was like, I have to say, it was epic. It was the most fun interview I've ever done.
That is so nice.
Putting that on the website.
Chee-Yun said the best interview ever. Yeah.
It was the most fun interview. And I mean, it was such a roller coaster. Like I cried and I laughed so much. I have to put some eye cream on now.
Oh no, trust me, I get it. Yeah, we just started our first week of school, so I'm sure we're already getting
eye cream on the go.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for your time. We hope to work with you again in the future. Thank you.
Anytime, Darrian. And so thank you so much for reaching out to me. I was so honored.
I knew I had your phone number for a reason. I was like, I don't know why she gave me her number. And I was like, one day I will use it. And I did.
Oh, I'm so glad that you did. And thank you so much. And feel free to contact me anytime.
Oh, thank you so much. All right. Have a wonderful new year, 2023.
Thank you. Thank you too.
Thank you. Bye. Have a good day.